Hello, everybody. Welcome back. That's a song called Pink Hydrogen by James Lucid, a musician and a filmmaker that you'll find links under my video too. He's produced a prolific amount of anti-nuclear music. And you won't be disappointed, trust me. And who am I? I'm Dana, the nuclear proctologist. I'm going to choke here in a second. I'm drinking cinnamon tea. It's a vascular... It's good for thinning your blood, and it's good for getting your veins properly, right? Restoring your veins. And it's the same thing with cayenne pepper, hot pepper. I think a spoonful of each. One for tea for the cinnamon. I mix it in hot water, and the other one I just mix it in cold water and slug it back into me twice a day. It's good. It's really good for thinning your blood, though. It's way better than those nasty pharmaceutical drugs they give you. You can call into these live shows. 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. And we got a wonderful, if there's such a thing, we got a very informative show. Can't call it wonderful. And we got a poll that describes why it's not wonderful, I guess. Has the radioactive fallout from Fukushima's and Japan poisoned humans and species food sources worldwide? It's a terrifying thought, and it's a horrifying fact. And I'm just going to concentrate on quantifying that assertion, that poll tonight for everybody. And we still got some headlines, news stories from last night we didn't get to cover. And away we go. Hope everybody's doing well. Hi, everybody. Officials back from Fukushima, invisible blanket of death that covers everything. So they're talking about the entire country, an invisible blanket of death. This never goes away. It doesn't lose its energy for millions or billions of years. And if you consume it, it's incredibly brutal to your internal organs, to your thyroid glands, so radioactive hormones, and your stem cells, so radioactive stem cells. And that's going to be true and applicable to every species. So keep that in mind as we meander through this story tonight, I guess. Parents suspect heart defects related to Fukushima. And so are you seeing an incredible increase in heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline problems? I bet you are. And we're trying to drive this story out there. We've been at it for a couple of weeks. And I'm pretty sure anybody here regular is switched on anyway, but you can never be switched on enough. Radioactive peaches. A genetic passport because of radioactive contamination for a major population exposed to nuclear radiation. That's every species, though. That's not just humans, okay? And that's symmetrical worldwide. It deformed their genes. Sorry, it's a bit of a bummer. And they're talking about twins attached by organs grown outside the body of all places. One-eyed cyclopses, babies with joint heads. They respond to people around them. uh, all of Japan is contaminated, and I can take you through that prefecture by prefecture by prefecture, and I have many, many times. And the numbers are just nothing we've ever seen in history pre-Fukushima. It has occupied its own space and time. Fukushima is a unique event. It's the equivalent of a meteorite striking your planet, except it plays out. It's so sneaky the way radiation sterilizes all the species and they slowly disappear. Professor clear that low-level contamination is probably more dangerous than a single dose. Yeah, if you're perpetually, there's two types of there's many different kind of sources of radiation, right? But man-made, there's thousands of sources. And each one of them are unique, and there's nothing on the planet with replicating cells that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against the anthropogenic man-made radiation. So your body will attack it, or insects or birds, or your pets or your children, your loved ones. The wonderful diversity of species on this planet, all of them have the same issue where they don't have an autoimmune trigger that can defend against ingesting or being contaminated per se with anthropogenic man. Because like if there's radiation outside your house, say it's cesium-137, that'll pulse 600 feet every second almost at the speed of light in every direction. And so the species are outdoors, they're much more vulnerable. And they're much more vulnerable because they're very small, right, compared to the humans. Clear that low-level contamination is more dangerous. Grasshoppers with deformed wings, gray eyes, not reds, birds with abnormal sperms, strange large tumors. That's 2012. They picked up 30 million one-ton black bags, and the one-ton black bags are about 6 to 8 times bigger than that bag right there. AI gave me a hard time with some of my stuff. Reported there's no sparrows. This is 2012. Says birdwatcher Nagoya downtown area was void of any form of birds. We've seen this now symmetrical worldwide. In the communities, there are birds like the seed eaters seems to be doing pretty good if you put it in the context of the insect eaters, because they've almost disappeared. But the seed eaters are still not very good, right? There's very, very few of them. Veterinarian rates of deformed babies in Tokyo will skyrocket from Fukushima. People who were there should not marry at all costs. And we're seeing that now. The birth rates in Japan is... they've got all kinds of campaigns to try to produce babies, because the Japanese species will go extinct quicker than the rest of us because they're at ground zero. We've all been polluted by the radioactive fallout. And when I say it's all the species, 9 million species, and all humans, from the weapons testing. Weapons testing was a war. It's the same bomb, the same radioactive fallout. Not calling it a war is denial. The Soviet Union's biggest bomb was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki bombs. These are plutonium bombs, by the way, going off at the same time. 3,800 Nagasaki bombs. If you're not familiar, go look at a picture of Nagasaki and then get context of the radioactive fallout we're talking about. It was enormous. It was felt and it was harmful worldwide, let's put it that way. Everyone on Earth has been irradiated by Fukushima. Fukushima was a different creature. 36 reactor cores and 8 fuel pools are missing, / covering the planet, an invisible blanket of death. That takes a few decades to play out, but we're way down the rabbit hole at this stage. And everyone on Earth has been irradiated by Fukushima. Shocking new study reveals the true extent of the global impact. And scientists are only just now confirming far-reaching effects of the nuclear disaster. 2017. Now, I was on the ocean doing research expeditions for 4 to 5 months a year. And the industry likes to describe me as a grifter or something, as a scam artist and everything else. And there's many, many of them have come and gone. I'm still here. I've outlasted all of them. All the attacks, all the insults, all the conjectures, all the deceitful, dishonest, just cowardly attacks upon me have all just... The truth doesn't need to be validated. The truth is the truth. That's the fact. And so I just deal with the facts. I don't deal with anything else. And what's the point? You can't have an educational program. Nuclear is such an interesting topic because you have to stick directly to the facts, right? You can't... If you make a mistake, a Freudian slip, that is chopped up and eventually used to bludgeon opposition with, right? Saying, he doesn't know what he's talking about, listen to this. And because I produce so much material for so long, I do, make mistakes, but I got that beaten down to a very fraction of what it was. It's not mistakes, it's honest slips, right? Mass starvation event plagues the West Coast, Canada, United States. The animals are starving as the food chain continues to collapse. Gee, I wonder what that could cause something like that. The massive die-offs of sea creatures from California to Alaska. Like, that's an absurd distance. So California, you got to go all the way up to Washington, Seattle. And from Seattle, you got to go away. You're in Canada. Now you got to go all the way to British Columbia, to Alaska, through British Columbia. There's 27,000 islands. And then Alaska is huge. It's incredible. It's exactly like British Columbia in many ways, except you're into the colder temperatures, right? But the fjords and the inlets and the islands are identical in sight. And because there's no sound anymore, the species are gone. Mass starvation events. So that was sterilization of the species is what caused that. Death really quite troubling, yeah. You have no idea. I was out there for 6 years in the middle of it. Scarred for life. United States hit with extremely large peaks of Fukushima radioactive materials. It's really interesting how you don't see the word fallout too often. Significant amount of plutonium released for months. Well, plutonium and uranium is 235 is what the reactors is what causes the magic in a reactor, right? The splitting of the atoms. And it needs to keep producing that in order to keep the chain reaction going. But it also produces many, many absurd about what's known as daughters, which is pretty hideous to call this stuff a daughter. Hopefully a daughter would never do this to someone they love. A significant amount of plutonium released for months. A significant is these are breeder machines. That's how they produce electricity to boil water for 1 million homes and businesses every minute. Once you take it out of the reactor, it's still splitting the atoms, the same atoms. There's no containment anymore. And that's the secret of the industry. It doesn't want you to appreciate it, comprehend in any sense, or dwindle, or to think about. Radioactivity from the plant was measured globally and blanketed, and that's an appropriate word, the entire northern hemisphere. Blanketed the entire northern hemisphere. Blanketed. Now, it means that you're contaminated externally and internally. So is your water, so is your food. Actually, here's a plutonium model. This is based on 20 days in your top left, 21 days behind me. My Geiger counter at the top of the screen is live. And I apologize that I'm not full of piss and vinegar. I'm getting there. I did, however, have an epiphany just before we went live. I wrote it down. I made a note and left it on my work table. Let me bring that up and show it to you what I'm talking about. I'm really pleased. I'm really tickled pink with this one. Well, you know, I got a lot of short videos, right? Bear with me. I got a mouse. Next time I go outdoors, I got to go pick up two new mouses for the computer. Both of mine have. I'm a bit abusive when it comes to the mouses. Bastard, I'll kill you right now. Kind of abuse. So, nothing is safe to eat after Fukushima. And the numbers you're looking at are numbers that I gave the video. So, the most I got on that particular video, the first one, is 514. Now, normally you can get 1 million views, 2 million views on this in just a few days for most people. But the biggest number I got is not even 1,000. It's 514. It's got the 514 because I use it as the preamble roll to my shows. So if my show, I do a preamble and I can have a little video playing before we get to the show. So when people come there to see what time the show is, this little preamble video will play. And that's why it has 514 views. And I made all of those videos in one day. One go, and I posted them all in one go. I broke the back of the nuclear industry for quite a while. They were really upset with me. Stop posting this garbage, they would say. But when you watch these little videos, these are certainly not garbage. And James Lucid has got almost 260 songs created, or anti-nuclear songs. And so each one of these videos got a little song in it. And so I'm going to make another 100 of these videos, maybe 200. And I'm going to use the AI songs, the incredible music and videos that James has produced to complement my video. I'm going to pick out because these songs are basically stories, so I'm going to pick out like very catchy and very informative little stuff to put at the end of the video. Because I might do a 35-second video, but the video can be 59 seconds long. And qualify to fit into these small categories, right? And then I can fill in the end. It's going to be fun. I'm already excited about it. It's a great project. But it's so appropriate because we are not going to lose this battle. We are going to destroy this industry, period. Has Fukushima's radioactive fallout from Fukushima, Japan, poisoned humans and the species' food sources worldwide? Let's get back to that. But I just thought the nuclear industry would like that. I mean, the fine folks that find these videos or watch these videos or have been around forever, bless your hearts, would appreciate what I'm saying, how well that's going to work out. I can't wait. I might even get started tomorrow. But I mean, I've been resting. But that really picked up my spirits when I thought about that. There was like 5 minutes before I went live, and I went back out in the kitchen and I wrote down on a piece of paper and put it on my desk that to make another 100 videos and use James's songs. I think it's going to be epic. So this is plutonium-239 dispersion. So think about this statement right here. Significant amount of plutonium released for months. Now think about the model to your top left-hand corner, right up here, is, well, I'm facing the screen, so I'm thinking you're getting the same picture, right? It says TEPCO 2011-19, and the model is based upon 20 days. That's only 20 days. These reactors have been melting down for 13 years. Cesium-137 detected in Virginia rain. I've said from the beginning that there is Fukushima fallout. It's very unusual to see the word fallout. It can't be detected with your Geiger counters. So my Geiger counter is not showing cesium-137 up there. And the numbers up there are quite frightening, 160. It's winter, so it's not unusual now to get 300 plus counts per minute. Plutonium escaped Fukushima reactors as gas. It was a colossal 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures inside. Can't be detected. Terrible things are looming for the children. Now, we know this to be true. And you'll see some of that coming up if I can get to it. For goodness sakes, don't eat anything from Japan. Don't let your loved ones eat it. Don't let them go to Japan. Nuclear expert, I'll get into a fist fight with my loved ones if that's what it takes to stop them from going to Japan. Nuclear expert in Japan, I'm going to lose, of course, because I'm old and pathetic, but I'll sacrifice it to stop my loved ones from going to a nuclear wasteland on a drop of a hat. Nuclear experts in Japan, plutonium is everywhere. It's everywhere. So if you're eating food from the nuclear wasteland, don't forget it's everywhere. All your food is going to be contaminated with it, particularly if you're eating from Japan. This is why we're seeing the health issues in Japan that are just mind-boggling. And you'll see quite a bit of that coming up. It is everywhere after Fukushima reactor exploded. It's being redeposited in unanticipated locations. And black radioactive dust, just wherever you go, it's running right into the Pacific on top of that. So the whole country is covered in radiation. So what happens when they have typhoons or heavy rainfall or snow melt? The whole country is washing radiation out into the ocean. The problem with this radiation, because there's so much neutrons involved in it, and because you got betas and alphas and gammas and neutrons, all of them are pulsing energy almost at the speed of light everywhere, and they're hitting each other and ricocheting, causing X-rays. But this activity is irradiating the leaves, irradiating the pollen, irradiating the debris and the litter and the foliage that's getting washed into your rivers and your estuaries and into your oceans. It's irradiated. And that the tsunami debris in the first year was 2,000 square miles, the size of Texas, of a tsunami debris in the Pacific Ocean. That was incredibly radioactive stuff because that tsunami debris was covered immediately with the worst of the worst radioactive fallout, the original detonations emissions, the original infernos. Over 200,000 atoms a kilogram of radioactive cesium in the dust from outside the Fukushima Prefecture, 2013. And so a Becquerel is a pulse of energy almost at the speed of light, but you have to have something to make that pulse of energy. That's called the atom, the anthropogenic man-made physical atom that nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against. And that's why you'll hear me describe it as 200,000 atoms per kilogram. And a single atom gets in your body, a single one, not 200,000, but a single one. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. If 200,000 gets in your body attacks each one every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells every second for the rest of your life. It has to displace, each one of them have to displace a red blood cell to exist. So a red blood cell carries oxygen nutrition. So think about the animals, think about the bees, think about the insects, think about the bases of the food chain, the bases of the oxygen chain, the bases of the carbon sequestering chain. And each one of them explodes every second. So your body attacks the damage from that also. In the case of cesium-137, it's got a pulse energy of 600 feet, so it's going to wreck your chromosomes, wreck your DNA, wreck your cells, etc., 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 throughout your entire body. Your body has to try to repair every one of them every second with white blood cells. It attacks the source for the rest of life, trying to build a tumor around it. And so as you're bioaccumulating this, because you're eating it, you're drinking it, you're breathing it, it's an elixir of hell, right? It's insidious. And that they built the reactors in an earthquake zone with 1,000 earthquakes a year, right on the tectonic plates. In the scope of the tectonic plates, these reactors are built right on them, about 40 miles away. So and when you're talking about tectonic plates, continental shelves, you're talking about 30, 40 miles don't matter in the scope of that, right? And then in a place where the prevailing winds were covered the entire northern hemisphere immediately, within 7, 8, 9, 10 days. certainly 30 at the most, the whole planet was covered. And that these disease factories, when they melt down, they don't need oxygen. So they can burn in any environment. So if you put nuclear fuel down into a deep geological repository and you say you're isolating it, you can't isolate it. It doesn't need oxygen to melt down, and it will. It's splitting atoms on top of it. There's no way to deal with it. It'll always come back and haunt every species on the planet forever. But you have to be terrified of food from Japan. That's the best way to think. Evacuees from outside Fukushima, there's a black dust absolutely everywhere. That's highly radioactive. And that fungus is known to aggregate it. And that is not necessarily tolerant of it, but it's known to aggregate it. And it's so radioactive it can't decompose. It can't just, because the biota can't decompose it. It doesn't exist. It can't survive in that environment. So it appears that they say that the fungus has adapted to it. Well, it didn't. It's like a McDonald's hamburger. You can put it in the closet for 2 years. When you come back, it looks the exact same. Except this stuff is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. And the numbers are catastrophic. So just walking past this stuff, you're getting 10, 20, 30 x-rays in many cases. There's a black dust absolutely everywhere that's highly radioactive. The government would not evacuate the children because they have to certify it was safe to return, and they could not. These are not governments. These are goblins and monsters, aren't they? It's an ongoing crisis. 2014. It's so much worse. The truth of it is just... and because I talk about it nonchalant, apologize. It's not that I don't understand the enormity of this. Trust me, and it's not that I'm not shocked. Every one of these shows shocks me. Putting these shows together, that will shock you, because I'm picking each one of these out of many. It's not like these are all picked out of they're in a folder and I go bang. And so I might sit there and go through 300, 400, 500 of these each time, looking for 10, 20, 30, or 40. And what do you think happens to my subconscious? Like, really? Because I have 60,000 studies, too. Right? That, what I call a ticker tape. And they study every on radioactive fallout, and they study everything in the biosphere and the ecosystem. So that always plays... like a film when you're looking at this stuff in your background. You're like, gee, I got to study on that, study on this, and study on that. Black radioactive material being reported 100 kilometers south of Fukushima. Black radioactive material. You know, where they're growing food in the nuclear wasteland, right? They're shipping it to other countries for many, many years and relabeling it as from the United Kingdom or Canada or France or something. And every nuclear reactor is surrounded by farms on top of that, worldwide. Except for the ones that are in the cities, they're surrounded by the people. It's the same thing, right? Get them in a little bit more quicker. Almost 1 million times more radioactive fall in Ibaraki soil in 2009. That was a low estimate. Cesium from Fukushima plant fell all over Japan. These are they all look the same, but they're different medias, right? Each one of these stories are from a different media, aggregated. And they're usually they were aggregated in groups of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stories on the same subject. And then the consensus of those 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stories is those headlines. That was the consensus. Because that's what I do all the time, is I'll read multiple stories to understand the story, because you won't get the full story anywhere unless you come here, basically. And that's just a terrifying fact. Cinnamon tea. You buy powder, or you can just take cinnamon, raw cinnamon, dried cinnamon, and use a carrot peeler, and just peel off a little bit, enough to fill up a teaspoonful. chop it up pretty fine, put it in your cup and let it steep for 5 or 6 minutes. It's really good on bad throats too. I had the plow come by today and plow in my driveway with great big boulders of snow. So I wasn't very happy about that. I did not want to go outdoors. That took the good out of me. And I woke up just before the show there. I had a little nap. Almost 1 million times more radioactive falling in the Baragi soil. The elementary 4 million atoms per cubic square meter topsoil. So a square meter. You stand up and put your arm out and turn around. That's basically a square meter section, right? So a child standing there is absurdness. 4 million atoms per square meter. 4 million physical atoms pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second in every direction. And a lot of it for hundreds of feet. So imagine the force covered with that. And so then the spiders become sterilized, the birds, the insects, the very foundation of the biota that breaks down the foliage in the litter becomes sterile, can't reproduce. And so that whole system goes away. And this is why you're seeing massive floods, massive forest fires, because the ground is not soaking up water and it's tinder dry. When you get a few lightning strikes, all this foliage and litter that didn't break down now will wafer thousands of feet and land again and set off another raging infernos. These are catastrophic numbers. Like 4 million atoms per square meter. It's just, we've never heard tell of anything like this pre-Fukushima. North America looks exactly like that. Officials made it mandatory to use the Fukushima rice from the nuclear wasteland in school lunches. It's really hard. It's shocking for sure, but it's hard to appreciate that kind of contempt. You can't escape it, and then they're forcing them to eat the worst of the worst food. And now they're wondering why they can't reproduce children. $27,000 atoms a kilogram of cesium in kindergarten near the west coast of Japan. 200 plus kilometers from the meltdown. 27,000 atoms per kilogram. You got to multiply that by 66. Let me do that for the giggity effect. $27,000 atoms per kilogram. That's absurd, by the way. So you want to multiply it by 66.6 to get a square meter. So 1.8 million atoms per square meter at the kindergarten. It's very sobering that the Japanese are so cruel. They would keep the children in this nuclear wasteland. You know, for the first 2 years, many parents would in Japan, and I'm talking about 60-70% of the parents wouldn't let their children go outdoors just to school and back because they were forced to go to school, right? It won't be long before they sell the 1-ton bags of radiation at the supermarkets. Authorities hid the radioactive plume forecast to avoid evacuation. It's not akin to murder, it's a genocide, right? Because there's nobody on the planet or species that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And then you can't get away from it in the supermarkets or the restaurants. And the rice they couldn't sell because it was so radioactive, they sold it in bulk and called it domestic rice to the major supermarkets and convenience stores. 70% of the children tested in Kanto, that's an area includes Tokyo, have radioactive cesium in their urine, says a journalist, Jake Alderson-Stein. Slight rise in birth defects in post-meltdown Japan. More study needed. 2013. Well, it wasn't slight. There's 14,200 children, 14.2% of 100,000 children that are newborns, neonates, and infants that need heart surgery, open heart surgery, for congenital malformations due to the what's known as the hole in the heart. Look up Chernobyl Hearts documentary. It was done by a foundation from the United Kingdom. And watch it. Don't turn away. Watch it. It's a really good documentary. But the truth is brutal. Nuclear is brutal. It's not like a banana. It's not like a potato chip. It's not like walking in the sunshine. It's not like climbing a mountain. It's not like flying on an airplane. It never was, never would be. But that's the lie they've been shoving down everybody's throats from birth. And they go to university. The inbreeds are going to university to get an incredible education to come out and tell that particular lie, because that job exists. That's how much ingrained it is now. They normalized it in their own little fantasy world. Their little fantasy world is going to come crashing down, I can tell you that. I can promise you that. It's like Russian roulette. Only 10% of the school lunches in Fukushima tested. 10% of the school lunches. So what do you think they're up to when they're doing stuff like that? You think they're purposely trying to poison the most vulnerable of Japan's society? Is that not the stupidest thing conceivable? Hi, Kevin. I got a celebrity on the page tonight, Kevin Blanche. Let's keep going here. 70% of the children tested are contaminated with radioactive cesium, all of them from outside the idiot prefecture known as Fukushima. And that's the major news source. Look over there. You can see the major news source. But these stories are aggregated from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stories that day on that same subject. And what they would do further down in the story, they'll link you to every one of them. These stories are not opinions at all. They're not conjectures. They're just regurgitated. Well, the media is a lot of times opinions and conjectures, so maybe I'm not 100% right. You couldn't drag me to Japan. Here, Dana, here's $2 million. Come on, let's go to Japan. You only got to go there for 24 hours. Like, get the frig away from me, or I'll gut you with a filter knife. This is major media. Major problems with radiation testing for children. How cruel is this Japanese culture? What they do to the children. We got a story there where there's 80,000 or 90,000 children, like 5-year-olds, were given dosimeters because their parents were worried about the radiation. And the dosimeters are not read by anybody in Japan, any university, because there's kids, you can't read them. You got to be an academic to read those particular types of dosimeters they gave the children and the pregnant women in the nuclear wasteland. Those studies were sent to places like Los Alamos National Laboratories, and Berkeley and MIT and Stanford and Oxford and Yale universities. Come on down, get sick, and go home and die. That's what the theme should be for visiting Japan. Get sick and die. Government model shows Fukushima's radioactive gas near Tokyo skyrocketed 10 billion times normal. Skyrocketed. So, like, in North America, because of 3 Mile Island, there was a concession made with the nuclear industry that they would put 50, 60, 100, 150 sirens, large sirens, within a 10-mile radius of a nuclear power plant. But those sirens should extend out about 2,000 miles, or right around the entire planet in reality, right? It's such a stupid, it should never existed. It was an absurd public relation coup against humanity. It's still ongoing in order to enforce the barbaric narrative. Very high concentrations recorded at all monitoring posts in the northern hemisphere. Very high concentrations means your water, your food, your children's playgrounds, your forests, your fields, your pets, your animals, your fresh air is permanently poisoned now. And they're growing food in the nuclear wasteland to try to make it even worse. What does that tell us? What does that teach us? What do we take away from some culture that does something like that? Government session reveals 400,000 times normal radioactive xenon. First off, xenon-133 is not normal. It's at all. Levels in Chiba. Oh, I'm so stiff, man. Isn't that funny? That almost killed me today. We're hoping to get snow on Thursday. I mean, get out and start doing some research, because the blizzard we had the weekend was 110 kilometers an hour winds too, and so there's huge dry patches out there. Right? We need more snow to balance out what happened. We got a lot of snow and it piled up in a lot of places. We got so many dry patches out there. It's very hard on your equipment, right? So I can't go out there anyway. But I'm hoping by Friday I can suck it up and get out there and get started, right? We want to get as much research in every day if possible. And so the shows, it won't be as often, but they'll be incredibly informative. We still got I still got 14,000 pictures that we haven't got to yet. We recovered over 1,000 ponds, no birds. I'm sorry, in 2 ponds we've seen a little family of young birds. 2 ponds. I don't know if they were migratory birds or not, but they were ducks each time. We got good pictures. And about 3,000 miles of the coastline, if you map it out. And so we went different, wherever you can get down to the coastlines. The species are missing. We got to tell that story at some point soon. Government sessions reveal 400,000 times what is considered normal radioactive xenon-133 levels in Chiba, which is right alongside of Tokyo. And the actual figures are probably much higher. Much higher is being polite, or catastrophically higher. And so you can't have one without many, many others. And you can't have one in prolific without many, many others prolific numbers too. Right, north, and so here's a case in point. You had 400,000 times the xenon-133, but you had 500 trillion atoms per kilogram from the highly radioactive glass arena, so-called glass arena in Fukushima. If it's significant consequences for human health, then it's a catastrophic consequences for the species. It changes the understanding of the disaster. It's extremely important, and our ideas of health implications should change, which is what we're reinforcing here all the time. We said, do not discuss on social medias. What's really interesting to me is in my comments section, that the reason that's there is so I know to record the video, because you'd be surprised how frantic it is the last 5 minutes before my show goes live. It's literally frantic. And it's very difficult to get there exactly on time. I'm usually within a minute or so. And I'm very disciplined. I'm not bragging on it, but I'm very disciplined in all of this whole routine that I got. Because that's the only way you can make this work. Everything is a routine. Everything has its place. Like my studio is pretty incredible. It's hard to appreciate. If you see my studio, you'll be like just gobstruck. Trust me. We put a lot of attention into everything was about detail and equipment we knew that wasn't garbage. I knew it was going to last a leg. And we've been using this equipment for quite a long time, right? We've upgraded a lot. We spent, like last year, we spent $900 on preamp and equalizer for the microphone. And the microphone was $800. So you gotta have a vision, right, to make it work. I built it all in my head from all the different companies, and then I ordered in all the parts almost at the one time for the majority of it, and then I built it. Then it took like 30 days or something to get it to work. Yeah, let's go to Japan and get sick and die. Officials admit deadly Fukushima meltdown cover-up. TEPCO president, we lied about the meltdowns. It was a cover-up. It's a grave issue. It's an unprecedented nuclear disaster. It's not unprecedented. Like, each of the reactor buildings has 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings and a reactor core. So the 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings probably has around 8 reactor cores in them because they don't have a repository to store it. And that's where they keep their reactor cores, is in the fuel pools at the top of the buildings of these 40-year-old reactors. And you're taking a huge chunk of the reactor out every 14 months and putting it in the fuel pool. And it has to stay there for decades, splitting atoms with no containment directly into the biosphere and the ecosystem in the local area. So each reactor core is equal to at least 100 Chernobyls. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. It was a new reactor. It didn't have fuel pools at the top of the buildings. Fukushima reactors are pure uranium, pure plutonium. And reactor 3 in Japan is a totally different creature. Again, it's 2 billion times more. This stuff is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Try to wrap your mind around that statement. So a single atom is catastrophic. And because it pulses energy every second, almost at the speed of light, wrecking chromosomes, DNA, and cells, imagine what it does to the birds and the insects and the phytoplankton and puppies and everything else. I like their last statement, an unpardonable breach of trust. And that's how you should see the entire nuclear industry, as an unpardonable breach of trust. It's the biggest breach of academics, the biggest criminal. I don't know how you would put it, really. It's the biggest breach of academics we've ever seen. The academic community has worked diligently to hide this from you worldwide. It's a concerted effort. There was 2,000 academics just in Taiwan that spammed the internet for years, for the first 2 or 3 years. I included university nuclear students, by the way, and former alumni. If that's not a betrayal of trust, what actually is? If that's not a broken system that you can't trust, what actually is? If that's not the most unscrupulous, and what a betrayal, right, to the academic community done it to us. They worked unbelievably hard so they could keep their jobs. So their wives and children and friends and families and husbands and loved ones and everybody else wouldn't know they were actually monsters because the monster's cloak had gotten pulled off them. They know they're monsters. That's what blows my mind, is they know. You have no idea. They know they're monsters. They have to fake every smile to everybody they know. They're actual monsters. And we're talking about millions and millions of these insidious monsters. You need the world's biggest wood chipper and the world's biggest plank. So, you know how the old pirates would like take the sword and make them walk the plank off the ship? We need a big wood chipper underneath that. Every nuclear scientist on the planet should make the leap. And because we live in this world, we can use lasers to force them off the edge. You know, a laser, you can put it for the distance. It's like a knife that gets longer and longer, chases them off the plank. I'm just talking. I don't mean do that. Clearly, no, I'm not going to get all the nuclear scientists on the planet together and make them walk a plank into the world's biggest wood chipper, okay? I'm not going to do it. You know I'm not going to do it. I'm allowed to have fantasies, though. That's what I'm on. The material spread globally. Yay. What does globally mean, Dana? Yeah, I don't want to know. I'm always a little shocked that there was academics that spoke out originally. I should make sure I put that out there because where did these stories come from, right? There were academics originally, but they've been silent ever since after about 3-4 years. And by the time we got to 2017, it was almost non-existent to have a dissenting voice in the academic community. I'm very bitter about that, which is why I'm drinking cinnamon tea. Man, it's actually good. And you know what I found out about the cinnamon tea is that would make a wicked iced tea. Because I have tea, my tea goes cold, and I'll still guzzle it down because. So this is a plume model less than 30 days of radioactive fallout. All the models basically agree with that particular model. So your food worldwide we got a problem, and that problem is extended all the way out into all the species. Over 60 million Japs irradiated by Fukushima. Nuclear expert. 50,000 square miles of Japan is highly contaminated. The whole country is. But the closer you are, if you're within 5-10 prefectures of the reactors, you're in a brutal nuclear wasteland. If you're on the other side of the island, right, all the way south, you're still brutally radioactive nuclear wasteland. We know that because their sewage is radioactive, their sediment from the water filtration facilities is too radioactive to get rid of. The garbage, the ash from the garbage and the incinerators is too radioactive to get rid of. That's just a fraction of the facts, but that's the fact. Japan is highly contaminated. Millions need to be evacuated. The government the nuclear industry has decided to sacrifice them. They've taken over every country with nuclear, and they got the key positions in the government. They're not the government, they're the nuclear industry. They look like the government, they're in that position, they're getting paid by the government, but they're the nuclear industry. They have usurped your medias and your universities, and then leveraged that now to put themselves in the key positions. And that's symmetrical in every country. They really are a plague. They really are just a disgusting parasite. And they have to cannibalize and consume everything on the planet to exist. More than 70% of the country contaminated by radiation. No, the numbers are clear. It's the entire country, right? And the rest of the planet. After 30 days, the entire planet. So how bad is Japan going to be, right? It's still melting down, for goodness sakes. Yellow rain recently reported in Tokyo also happened after Chernobyl. The government assured the residents it was pollen, but no, March. It was snowing in March in Japan. You can go look at the tsunami videos, and you'll see people stuck on the roofs of the dilapidated buildings from the tsunami, dealing with the falling snow. And we're talking about a lot of snow. We're talking about cold temperatures. And a lot of media reports from that period was talking about how do we get blankets and winter coats and everything else out to these victims. Because it was very difficult. You couldn't go rescue everybody. And so they were originally trying to force supplies out to everybody that they could, groups of people, right? The radioactive pollen, no, but it's true, the pollen is radioactive. The yellow rain, we've seen it after Chernobyl, is the same thing. It's radioactive fallout. It's heavy radioactive fallout, which means the food can never be grown in Japan. It should never be eaten anywhere. There's 865,000 extra cancers in the first year in Japan. Excess cancers. Almost 1 million excess cancers. And not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. How can anybody live in denial anymore? How does that work? How are we going to come up with a future? Do you really think you're going to have a long, healthy life? Those people out there that are in denial, the pro-nuclear community? You screwed yourself and everybody else. You dug a hole so deep you can't even climb out of it. And the minute the truth comes out, everybody's going to hate your guts. And so you're only working to protect your reputation that you don't deserve to have. You're a criminal. You're a criminal. You deserve to be held accountable. You don't deserve to enjoy your life. The pro-nuclear community are criminals. Every nuclear power plant is built in prime farmland. Name another industry with that attribute. You won't find it. The only industry that exists in the middle of vast, fertile farmlands is nuclear power plants, or nuclear dumps, or nuclear fuel processing facilities. They're a poison to humanity in every step, every sense of that word. Tokyo drinking water unsafe. That's permanent. And we know that because the water filtration systems are so radioactive. All the pipes are radioactive now permanently. Anyway, even if you were to claw back magically all the radioactive fallout, the pipes were all radioactive. Because like the filtration systems are so radioactive they can't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration facilities. And just in the first year they had something like 60,000 one-ton bags of sediment that was so radioactive they couldn't get rid of it, and it made it into the news, and that's how we found out about it. And so they were passing out water bottles for the infants for the first 2 days. But then he said, oh, everything's good, have a nice day. Because that's what evil does. There was pains of conscience because they were passing out the water bottles. There's proof of that. The government is distributing water bottles paid for by the victims. The government's not distributing it. The victims are. The arrogance of them to say that the government is doing this or the government is doing that. The government is doing nothing. Taxpayers are doing it. They're paying for everything. The government's not taking it out of their pocket. Radioactive spinach 65 miles south of Fukushima exceeds the legal limits. Really? That's forever, of course. Japan bans radioactive green tea 40 miles southwest of Tokyo. You're talking 300 kilometers away. Because, it's absurd numbers. 570 atoms per kilogram. But that was considered safe in 2011. I'm laughing because otherwise I get angry, which is appropriate too, by the way. We'll just ship it to Canada, ship it to the United States, ship it to Great Britain, ship it to New Zealand, ship it to Australia. They're putting chemicals in the chemtrails that will lobotomize the population, basically. On top of that. And yet, here we are, we're still going. They're such cowards, this industry. It sneaks in all the GMOs, sneaks in all the radioactive fallout, sneaks in all the chemicals that were grandfathered in by the despicable EPA when they were created. With no environmental human impact studies. Government survey shows Fukushima fallout spread throughout Japan. Now at Okinawa, 1,700 kilometers away. It covered the whole planet in 30 days or less. Radioactive dust reported in Tokyo after recent fog. Over 4,000 atoms a kilogram of cesium. It never disappears. Be careful. Does plants like fog, the morning dew? Do they like to suck up that water, that morning dew, and help the plants grow, I wonder? Duh. Journalist finds Tokyo indoor dust contaminated with cesium. So, just measuring cesium, of course, if there's going to be 137, there's going to be 100 times more strontium-90 in the same sample. They can't measure. Their particular Geiger counter. 1,730 atoms a kilogram. Scientists dust with Fukushima fallout. This is the source of the human radiation exposure. Calling it dust is madness because it's a blanket. You're talking about being blanketed. And Fukushima plume covered most of North America. Now over the North Atlantic, the Caribbean, Canadian's East Coast. French said Fukushima cloud now at Atlantic, no risk. How can there be no risk from a plume of anthropogenic man-made radiation? How does that actually work? You just say it in the media, get your media to say it. It doesn't matter. The truth is never in the media anyway. Massive die-off reported in the Pacific Ocean, 2017. That's when I was out there. Well, one of the many years. No fish out there anywhere, over a very large area. What's happening? Where's their food? Frightening and alarming. Total failure in reproduction. Nothing like this we've ever observed before. No. And not if you put it down to a single day, it would be bad enough. But we're talking about endless days. Kevin Blanche said he was invited to Japan. No way. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm looking forward to making a whole bunch of short videos. Because we got better equipment now, right? And we got all anti-nuclear music to go with it. So the thing with music is, what makes that so important? There's quite a few facets. But one of the most important facets is copyright. I can't use your typical songs that most people are familiar with. Or most songs anyway, right? Only what YouTube lets me use, and everybody else is using that. Who wants to use that? I can't use most music because there's copyright. They'll take down your site in a heartbeat. And so having access to climbing up close to 300 anti-nuclear songs, that's special, man. Trust me. That is really something. With a good catchy beat, lots of chunks of it is just perfect for that application. I really think it's going to be something special, personally. 100% death rate of baby seals on the California coast. None have survived. 100% death rates of baby seals. So, when I look at my poll tonight, has the radioactive fallout from Fukushima, Japan, poisoned humans and the species' food sources worldwide? I got 16 votes, really? That's it? I got curb stomped on my show about this last night, too. They're very, very touchy when you talk about radiation for some reason. And food. Many are starving. None have survived. Suffering from a shortage of food. 2016, March. I was out there on the ocean during that period doing research expeditions for 4 to 5 months at a time. Extremely thin, all sorts of illnesses and infections. Milkless moms immediately abandoning the pups. Milkless moms. So they were mostly emaciated themselves, right? Yeah, because the Fukushima, this is a plutonium-239 dispersal, covered the west coast within, this model is based on 20 days, so 20 days. Fukushima radiation may be eating the holes in people's brains. Well, that would be true worldwide, wouldn't it? Right, when you look at the radioactive fallout, this model, by the way, is based on 20 days. So everybody in those, and every species in that, would have had this particular affliction. And officials are covering up the dire consequences of the crisis. Yeah, they sure like attacking me, don't they? Cowards. Worry over high numbers of cancers being detected. It's not just cancer. It's heart problems and liver problems and lung problems and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline and Alzheimer's and dementia, and autism, diabetes and Down syndrome. Does that sound familiar to anybody, huh? Does it? Does it? Huh? 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 So the first studies you do after a nuclear meltdown, and this could be continent-wide sometimes, is Down syndrome and autism. You're seeing pets, all kinds of pets now, with Alzheimer's and dementia. What does that tell us? Diabetes, of course. But every time you get your hair cut, ask the hairdressers just before you're finished, just as they're finishing up, saying, are you seeing a lot of Alzheimer's and dementia in your clients? And they're gonna be like, we were just talking about that the other day. Every hairdresser I go to, that's the reaction I get from every one of them. It's amazing. There's so many of them, right? They bring them in to get their hair cut, and they don't know who we are, and they've been coming here for decades. And it's like young people. We've never seen nothing like it. They don't know what to make of it. Yeah, it's called Fukushima radioactive. It's called a nuclear industry effect. They're despicable. It's a despicable industry. It's despicable people. They're despicable people. They make a lot of money, and then they use that to quantify being monsters. So they're the most cowardly people too, aren't they? Astronomical amount of radiation found in downtown Tokyo. Horrifying, horrific readings where kids are playing in Fukushima. Extreme levels found where food is grown for elementary school lunches. Nuclear expert was upset and shocked by the discovery. Yeah. Dead animals litter California beaches. Alarming phenomenon. Dead animals litter California. It wasn't just California, unfortunately, was it? Graveyard of washed up sea life. None of these were hearing about bird flu. You notice that? Graveyard of washed up sea life. Influxes of malnourished sea creatures. Malnourished / emaciated. Experts were really starting to worry. We're seeing animals are starving to death, covered in sores, stunted growth, weak immune system, compromised immune system, because you're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells. This is a model of the cesium. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. 137. I'll tell you the date on this now. That's the 19th of March. That's 8 days. That's 9 days in. That's the 20th of March. Let me move ahead for you. And 16 days in. Did I stop accidentally? That's 16 days in. That's cesium based on this particular model, 137. And 137 pulses energy 600 feet every second. Hundreds of millions of Pacific salmon are missing, presumed dead 2017. All along the radioactive fallout massive zone of the U.S. West Coast and Canada, Japan is suffering a historical collapse. Fish are starving to death. Fish are starving to death. All forms of ocean life are dying in stunning numbers across the Pacific. 2017. I was out doing research expeditions during that for many months at a time when we were coming home. And that was most of these stories were reports from my research expeditions, because there was nobody else to report it on, right? Ongoing fish famine along the U.S. West Coast. Fish famine. Well, the fish are starving to death. The phytoplankton was wiped out, the majority of it, 90+% of it, in the first year. Phytoplankton lives at the surface. You know, the phytoplankton, the bases of the food chain, the bases of the oxygen chain, the bases of the carbon sequestering chain, phytoplankton. And they live in freshwater too, right? At the surface. So they got heavily contaminated. And then the species that was eating them, my goodness. That's why we have lost 10 billion snow crabs in Alaska. The big, beautiful crabs just got up and disappeared. Hard to watch, I'll say. Noah's model was only based on 40 days of radioactive fallout. They tried to keep it just to the northern hemisphere, right? But it covers the whole planet, right? The plumes covers the whole planet. The West Coast bird die-off is the biggest ever recorded, period. The stomachs were empty. They got fish famines. The birds are starving to death. The whales are emaciated. Gee, I wonder what could be the catalyst for all of this. It ain't the bird flu. You don't see the word bird flu written anywhere, do you? Stomachs are completely empty. Staggering. Not bird flu, starvation. Now they're trying to blame the current mass species, what's left of it dying, on bird flu. A lot of these farms were fed Japanese radioactive food, so they had to cull the birds for almost a decade. They were shipping the food over to feed to the crops over here, to the chickens and stuff, and cows and that. And then they would say, the bird flu's here, we got to kill them. You can't consume them. They're insane, eh? They got so much control over the universities and the medias and the governments worldwide that they can just make the shit up and then pull, like IAEA is the backbone of the World Nuclear Association. On top of that, they're the backbone of all this madness. They're the crazies. Every one of these people are nuts in their $5,000 suit and their dirty underwear. Stomachs are completely empty. Never seen anything like it. Unprecedented in duration, in size, in scope. The deaths could reach hundreds of thousands. It was actually 1.4 million Cassini auklets, or common murres, and they dive 600 feet all day, and they feed on anchovies and squid and sardines and krill, which are like big shrimp, right? They can live up to 10 years. But they become sterile and didn't reproduce. And so the migratory species now don't have anything to follow. They'll still do the migratory runs. The whales a lot of the whales are dependent upon that same migratory. The dolphins, seals, sea lions, everything. All kinds of migratory birds were dependent upon those anchovies and squid and sardines and krill and everything. And herring and mackerel and that. Which is all dependent upon the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, which is wiped out right away. Mother from Fukushima was very weird. Plants with huge flowers and gigantic stems. I brought deformed vegetables for radiation measurement. So she had deformed vegetables. She brought them into an area where you're allowed to get measured for radiation. The officials didn't test any and yelled, "Don't you understand? We say it's safe." All the beetles were disfigured and died. It's quite a curse, isn't it, this industry? They picked up 30 million one-ton bags and 3% of the land, which was isolated to farmlands they want to activate and the communities where they want the complacent to move back into. Mutation increasing in Fukushima. Strange things are happening to the plants and animals. The government's news agency, long list of mutated life forms reported. Radiation fears are growing as the government finds strangely deformed trees around Fukushima. Nearly 100% have complete defects. Trees did not have a top bud, without which its growth cannot continue. Effects are worsening. Researchers were prevented from doing studies, so there's very little data. This is a crazy headline. The USS Ronald Reagan, there was one of, I think it was, don't quote me, I thought it was up to 40 American ships that showed up to do search and rescue to help the Japanese. The USS Ronald Reagan, it was an operation, what was that called? Operation, I can't remember anymore. Tamagotchi or something. Don't quote me, but so the digital watch is very popular, right? The Navy sailors said their digital watches stopped working basically at the same time. We were laughing at first, but then the U.S. Ronald Reagan had to change 14 jet engines on their helicopters because they were so radioactive from flying through the plumes. But the sailors were okay. The engines were destroyed, but the sailors were okay, Dana. These are just goblins. They're the worst population imaginable. They've spoiled it for 9 million species. 96% of Fukushima residents ingested cesium on December the 4th. The rest of them were and 56% in Tokyo area. Again, like every time you hear the word cesium, you got to realize the reactors run on plutonium and uranium. And whatever they're ingesting in cesium, they're going to be ingesting many, 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 many isotopes of, like uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, curium, the sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs. The list is very long. That's why there's 865,000 extra cancers in that first year, right? Extra cancers. The government says 1,500 tons of highly radioactive sludge may end up as soil for gardening. Of course, that never worked out because that's insane. They can't get rid of it. It's radioactive soil. Oh, well, let's use it for gardening. I mean, these are monsters. Instead of storing it, 50,000 one-ton bags, 50,000 one-ton pickup trucks. Think about that. Think about you're standing in your front door and there's 50,000 one-ton pickup trucks driving past your door and you're trying to cross the street and you can't cross it till 50,000 one-ton pickup trucks of sludge, of sediment from the water filtration facilities that is so radioactive they can't get rid of it passes your house. In 2011, July. March, April, May, June, July. So this is just one area. Well, it's a total of 865,000 extra cancers in the first year because not like a banana, it's not like a potato chip, it's not like walking in the sunshine, it's not like climbing a mountain, it's not like I should give it up, I suppose, because I'm still not that good. I was having a bit of fun there for a while. I had too much fun, probably. What do we get done here? 11, or an hour and 20 minutes in? Hour and 17 or something? Let me think. Yeah, I have to give it up, I guess. I'll go for a little bit more, but another 5 minutes or something. Fukushima contaminated water problems worse. Disaster site has struggled with water contamination for years and just announced recently that they think they finally have the ALPS decontamination system operational. That's 2014, August the 9th. So 2013, you see that building there? They're building? These were pictures that were released in February 2013. That's the ALPS system. So in 2014, almost at the end of that year, they were thinking they might have the ALPS system, water filtration system, working in 2015, 4 years later, which means they had filtered no water in the 4 years. The reactors typically, when they don't break, when they don't melt down, need 4,500 tons a minute. So think about 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks driving past your house every minute. 1,440 minutes a day. So there's a lot of water, right? And that's because they run an external power. Radiation doses in the Northeast and Great Lakes, like Canada, was equal to the West Coast, which we know is absurd. They found plutonium in every sample. It's everywhere on the paved surfaces. It's everywhere. The radioactive material from the reactor is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So a single atom is equal to 2 billion atoms of cyanide. So this model here is based on cesium-137. It's based, when the model stops, it's based on 30 days. It's based on cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And this is day 20 right there. It's never going to go away. And in that plume is going to be hideous amounts of other isotopes in large quantities. But cesium-137 covering the entire planet means you've got full body x-rays for every species and every forest on the entire planet, for starters. For just the bare starters, the bare minimum of that issue. and it's the contamination of the entire food chain and the water. And water is life. The moon is not a populated planet, right? Because it doesn't have water. Mars is not a populated planet, it doesn't have water. Earth is the only one we got, and this industry, in such a short period of time, have destroyed it for 1 million years. On purpose. They've done it on purpose. They built it on a fault line right alongside tectonic plates where they have 1,000 earthquakes a year and a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis, massive tsunamis. So they knew it was going to happen. They knew the plume would cover the whole planet right away. They put all the fuel at the top of the buildings in the most vulnerable places conceivable rather than having it somewhere else. It wasn't a shortcut. It was on purpose. It was built to happen. Comparisons with x-rays and CAT scans are meaningless. So every time you hear someone come, oh, it's like a CAT scan or a chest x-ray or something like that, they're actually sadistic demons. They're very educated and they know the difference. Inhaling the particles, drinking it, consuming it, breathing it, eating it, increases the radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion because it's in your body. It's exploding every second. It's wrecking chromosomes and DNA and cells. Like calling this evil, we got Machiavellian, whatever. It still doesn't do it justice how insidious and monstrous and horrific this industry actually is. It's criminal on a scale that most people can't process. Yeah, and you can't filter the water out. The Kevin Marble was just saying, the showers on the USS Ronald Reagan, the other rescue ships, American ships and that, couldn't filter the radiation out of the water. So when they were getting showers to wash the radiation off, they were just still washing radiation all over them. And they were drinking it and boiling their food and cooking in it. Inhaling particles increases. I'm going to try to make it to the bottom of the hour here, to 1:30. We're at 1:22 minutes right now, 1:23 minutes. So that's pretty easy because we're going to play. James got so many songs that it's hard to choose one now. I love it. Inhaling particles increases radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. It's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, according to the government. And the exposure, like consuming it, getting it in your body where it sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, increases the radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. The food was banned by 55 countries and 14 prefectures, which is half the country. So that's appropriate forever. Just because some of them lifted the restrictions don't mean it was appropriate or ethical or to have the moral compass or a high ground or have science to back it up. It simply doesn't work that way. This is radiation fallout. It permeates into everything. All the roots, all the branches, all the leaves, all the pollen, all the entire biosphere. It's a curse. And we're very fortunate to be here to tell you the story. Very privileged to be the one to make sure you got a real education. It's not a half-ass education. It's a real education. It is no exaggeration, said the ambassador to the United Nations Secretary General. It is no exaggeration to say that the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on number 4 reactor. That was 2012. But there's reactor 4. There's nothing left of it. So they were pretending that it existed. But he wasn't the only one that was doing it. Ernie Gunnarsson was doing it. Helen Caldicott was doing it. Christopher Busby was doing it. There was 1,000 academics doing it. Exposed radiation streaming into the atmosphere after number 4 fuel pool boils dry. The fuel pool might have 8 reactor cores in them. They're going to burn at such temperatures the other fuel pool will ignite right away too. And they're only separated by a very small, inconsequential rubber barrier, right? The barrier is actually rubber, right? It's filled up with air. So once it ignites in the first pool, the other pool will boil dry, and the fuel will ignite when it's exposed to oxygen and will burn. The zirconium claddings will burn at 1800 degrees. That'll ignite the fuel pellets inside of uranium plutonium. They burn at around 9,000. So that will evaporate the water instantly, and now you have a blanket of radiation covering the planet. That's permanent. TEPCO acknowledges vapor is still being seen at reactor number 2, 3, and 4 spent fuel pools. Yeah, because everything else is already gone, right? The fuel pools are at the very top of the buildings, 150 plus feet above that stump you see right there, that nightmare you see right there. All it takes is coolant to stop circulating at the spent fuel pool number 4 for extensive fuel damage to occur. It doesn't have to leak, crack, or fall for the fuel to overheat. Just stop the circulation. And the fuel is the fuel. You take the fuel out of the reactor core, you put it in a pool. It's still splitting the same atoms it would, with no containment now, to boil water to power 1 million homes and businesses. So every fuel pool on the planet, is over 1,000 of them, are doing that. That's the dirty secret they don't want you to know about, because then you would understand the absolute horror, the incomprehensible horror of that statement. The mind-boggling nightmare of that statement. How can they ever get away with this for so long on top of that? And you will never find that statement anywhere else, by the way, which is the most frightening part of the story. This was a 2013, November the 7th. And they're alleging the media, that's the media, was at the top of Medusa, 150 feet above that stump in the thin air. And they were transferring the fuel from the fuel pool of reactor 4. But there's reactor 4 to your left. And to your right, that's a fraction of the media pretending that they're 150 feet above the stump to your left, and everything is perfectly fine. And what they'd done was they built this contraption off-site. Then they brought it in and assembled it with cranes, remote control cranes. And it doesn't physically touch the other building, as you can see. Right? It doesn't physically touch the buildings. These are well-disciplined homeless. If you're in a paper suit at the nuclear meltdown site, you're a homeless person. The academics are not going there anyway. So they built this contraption. They put the panels. You can see one of the panels over there. And here's the complete panels. But that's the building. Like, you can't build a building above it and then claim that you're in the fuel pool of a building that didn't exist because you built this contraption alongside of it. But over to your left, you can kind of see. That's a pretty old picture, right? That's 2013, I think, that picture. I layered the BBC, ABC, RT, physics.org, TEPCO, Motherboard, World Nuclear News, and pictures that they were showing you of the reactor 4. And they were showing you that picture. So that's some sadistic stuff. You have all the big media coming out claiming that these buildings don't look like that. No. They look like this, Dana. And here we are all these years later. So I created this picture a decade ago. I was like, I got him now, man. I'll have him on the run after I post that picture. I'm still showing that picture. Nobody cares. And all it would take, and I used to send it to Greenpeace through Twitter. And every Greenpeace out there blocked me and took the picture down. All I said, how about retweeting this picture for me? I was like, you're blocked. I always disappeared, and because you know how I like to document everything. Like, you should be surprised how much effort I put in every day documenting everything. I'm very anal about documenting everything. I got like an asphyxiation on it. So think about this statement right here. Doomsday-like radiation released. If a fire in the pool at Unit 4 would be a global catastrophe. So if you have a fire in a Unit 4, well, what about Reactor 3? That had a fire 150 feet above it, and the building doesn't, like a stump of a firecracker left, right? The fuel pool's at the very top of the building, not the bottom of the buildings, right? So Reactor 4 is the same thing. So you got Reactor 4 on one side, Reactor 3 on the other side. They're both gone. They're right alongside of each other. So even if the other one didn't melt down and blow up and catch fire and blow up and melt down, you still couldn't get close to the buildings now ever because you had a meltdown alongside of it. But you had 4 meltdowns. Western Tokyo may have been contaminated when the radioactive radiation plume fell to the ground after Reactor 2 core was exposed. So they're acknowledging Reactor 2 core was exposed, but right alongside of Reactor 2 was Reactor 3 and Reactor 4. But Reactor 2 looks like it's intact, right? It's not, trust me. It's got China syndrome. You're talking about 9 reactor cores, because there's typically 4 in each pool. There's 2 pools at the top of each building. They're such dishonest, they can't open their pie hole without being dishonest. You know, the stacks are quite a ways away from the reactor. You can see the stack right between the 2 buildings right there. That white stack. The doses at the bottom of it were over 10 sieverts per hour. It was actually 25 sieverts per hour in the emails the FRIA release, the Freedom of Information Act releases. And I got links below my video to 4 million of them, by the way, to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission site. And you can download the PDF files of all the pictures and the videos and the actual stories, the emails. Imagine 4 million emails, but no, it wasn't a big deal. It was just an industrial accident, says the scums of the industry. So 3 sieverts an hour is a lethal dose. So you can't walk between the, even if the reactors didn't melt down and it was 10 sieverts an hour, but it's 10 sieverts per hour because the buildings had detonated and lost their inventories, right? So it was just fuel thrown everywhere for many, many. Fukushima Unit 1 and 2 stacks are too radioactive to get near forever. Massive radioactive release of Fukushima going on for almost 3 years. The visible steam, because you don't always see the steam, right? And the steam was coming out of the ground through big cracks in the ground at 10 sieverts per hour in 6 places. But the stationary Geiger counters, they maxed out at 10 sieverts. And just because you couldn't see it didn't mean that releases wasn't happening, right? You need the right conditions for it. What was really interesting was these pictures were released on the 10th anniversary. You noticed the reactors are redacted, and this is the common spent fuel pool. Why is that redacted? Each reactor had 3,450 spent fuel assemblies, 9 reactor cores, at least at the top of the 8 at the top of the buildings, 1 in the reactor core. So when they're talking about 500 fuel assemblies, these people should be in jail for the rest of their lives. This is the common spent fuel pool. We know that's gone. It's on the same street, the same height, but these buildings are not 190 feet tall like the reactors. They're pretty small compared height-wise. And so why was it pixelated? Completely pixelated and severe pixelation. You see that square gray? That's severe pixelation. Why did you do that? There's around 11 million pounds in it. That's gone. That's why. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. People should stay home and immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminant. They left. If you read the story, it's like throw the clothes away and just shower for hours. But of course, now your shower is going to be completely contaminated. The amount of radioactive fallout was catastrophic. 1 million atoms per square meter. The time of disposition, the time of actual underground. That was the Xenon 133. There's 20 million physical particles. There's 20 million pulses of energy at the speed of light every second per liter. And so everything was saturated. And what uses water? Well, all the life does, right? And so you got 20 million in a study from Canada. You got 1 million in another study. And so you only need 11 to cause heart problems for children. You only need 50 to cause irreversible heart damage for children. Did we get 50? Yeah, we got more than 50, didn't we? You only need, for children in Japan, it used to be 1 in a million children with thyroid tumors. Their thyroid gland is only around 2 centimeters. And the tumors are around 2 centimeters. And 35.8% out of 1 million is what it works out to. It was 13,646 out of 38,000 children. It used to be 1 in a million. So then, statistically, it would be 358,000 out of 1 million. So, which means they're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives, minimum, and they got tumors. But having a tumor in your thyroid means you're producing, from radiation, means you're producing radioactive hormones. So what's happening to the birds and the insects and every other species? Radiation data withheld from Seattle survey for national security purposes. Did you hire the radiation experts? Did you create that radiation protection agency in the United States and Canada to not tell you when you had an event? You created them for the event. If there's ever an event, we give you the money, the authority, the equipment, the education, and when you finally have an event, you stab everybody in the back. And then one of the worst, this was 2020, hundreds of thousands, it was millions and millions of them. There was 192 species of insect eaters showed up extremely emaciated because the insects had disappeared by 2020. They got no fat reserve and barely any muscle mass. Almost as if they've been flying until they couldn't fly anymore. Looking for food, right? 192 species. We followed that and gathered up the documentation on it. And the sulfur peroxide buckyballs from spraying the salt water on the reactors, there was no way to win this battle. And that was one of the worst things you could have done. Because the salt water now, you liberate the sulfur. The sulfur creates these spherical balls. And then there was unprecedented spike of the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. These are very, very hot particles. And the studies were shown that these spherical balls that are created by the sulfur at these enormous temperatures were ingesting uranium, plutonium, americium, ruthenium, curium, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod, into the spherical balls and become very mobile. So much more likely to poison and radiate and destroy the ecosystem of the biosphere. And there was multiple studies from different institutions on the sulfur. There was another study of the West Coast with 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129. So these are mind-boggling. All of these numbers are mind-boggling. This is not all of them by any shape or form. Of different studies of different isotopes. And this is undeniable, see? I can't deny it anyway because I've done a research expedition, so I can never turn that off. I can never walk that back, right? I can never switch this off. And I don't want to. This is my life now, see? I've been doing this for so long before Fukushima. Now that we're this far down the nightmare, I'm quite happy to be doing the things I'm doing. I'm quite privileged to be able to do the things I'm doing. I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight. I'm thrilled to tell this story because it's such an important story. It will always be the most important story on this planet. It'll be hard to supersede this story. I can't really quantify. We have destroyed the biosphere. We've destroyed all the whales, all the birds, all the mammals, all the animals, the health of every human on the planet. The water. What could be more important than this? The ultimate betrayal, right? The most incomprehensible, senseless betrayal. And then the public relation firms that work so hard to disenfranchise you from the truth and me from the population. What a betrayal that one will turn out. The history will look back and say, what a betrayal they were. We never had a chance to fight for our future because the public relation firms and the attack dogs of the industry, they didn't have a conscience, so they didn't understand the importance of dealing with an issue. They spend $1 billion a year just on public relations for the nuclear industry. That includes all kinds of stories, but all kinds of propaganda, of course, and silencing any dissenting voices. They're unbelievable monstrous when it comes to dissenting voices. It freaks them out because the pro-nuclear community says, "Oh, what's this story about nuclear?" And they start watching it like, I didn't know the nuclear industry was up to all of this. What we should be doing is seeking out the old age homes where the retired nuclear employees are, start interviewing them to find out what was really happening. What we got here? We're going to call it a wrap. I'm going to play a song here as we call it a good nighty. Bury the core. This is about WIP, Waste Isolation Pilot Project. It is applicable to any waste isolation project. The graphics are insane. And it's hard to appreciate these videos. You got to watch them multiple times to start noticing the details that James has got into these videos. I got a bad tickle in my throat. Well, we made it 142. That's pretty cool. I didn't think I was going to make it into the first hour. Notice how I always cheer up when I start these videos a lot. I feel like shit and I sit down, I start the show and I start cheering up. It's actually good for my soul, right? To sit here and flush this stuff out. His radioactive fallout, 18 votes is absurd. 18 votes. That's absurd to have small numbers, isn't it? 22 likes is an absurd small amount. 24 viewers is an absurd small amount for this story. Did I lie in this story? Did I misrepresent anything? Was I dishonest or deceitful? Was I belligerent, arrogant, and humorous? No. It was totally straightforward, provide the documentation. And the average person, like, I think the average person has no problem understanding a video like this. Who never knew nothing about nuclear, sit here and watch this and go like, oh shit. Oh crap. Damn, I gotta watch that again. We know I'm getting posted in many other different places, but just what I mean by the belligerent of this industry, that they work so hard to silence me and silence you. That kind of contempt shouldn't go unchallenged. Has the radioactive fallout from Fukushima, Japan, poisoned humans and the species, food sources worldwide? And clearly, that's a yes. And we're going to play Bury the Core. This is a story about the Waste Isolation Pilot Project in Niigata. And we're looking at James Luce's website. Bury the Core. Out of Containment, man. That's a crazy cool song. I got no idea how he does it. All of them are just amazing songs. He's knocking it out of the ballpark every video now. And the videos themselves are absurd. Like, how much work do you got to do to make one of these videos? You'll see if you've never seen this before. We'll see everybody on the next show. Have a great night. A great day tomorrow. Hugs for everybody. See you on the next one now. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, we bury deep. We built it fast, we built it wide. Now we dig deep where the gamma rays hide. Oh. Stack it high, then pull away. It's out of sight, they say. Bury it down, down, down. Who's gonna keep it safe? The core's in place, it's here to stay. Oh, oh yeah, grooving now. Oh, bury the core, dig it, forget it, just ignore. Deep beneath the floor, no harm, no more. No harm, no more. We spin and we groove while the atoms collide. Nothing to see, it's buried inside. Oh, oh yeah, oh yeah. We shake the ground, yeah, we ride the groove. The waste is deep, we move and move. Ooh, it's deep down. So far below, we'll never know what's down below the cosmic flow. Ooh. Sight, out of mind, let the funk unwind. They say it's clean, they say it's pure. A bright solution, they're so sure. Oh, oh yeah, they got a plan. Who needs the sun when we got the core? They dig it deep, but what's in store? Ooh, what's in store? Ooh, what's in store? The groove spins on while the waste stays low. Bury it down, nobody knows. Nobody knows. The core, dig it, forget it, just ignore. Deep beneath the floor, no harm, no more. No harm, no more. We spin and we groove while the atoms collide. Nothing to see, it's buried inside. Oh, area, area. Let it spin, let it groove. We'll forget as we move. Oh, oh, we bury it down deep in the ground. Bury it down, down. Oh yeah, oh.